Hello and welcome. I'm Brent Glass, Executive Director of the Sing Sing Prison Museum. The mission of the Sing Sing Prison Museum is to tell the story of Sing Sing Prison, the 200-year history of an extraordinary place in America, and to connect that story to the present, to challenge all of us to imagine a more equitable justice system and to build a better society. One way we are achieving our goal is to collaborate with individuals who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. This poetry reading program today features work read and written by returning citizens who have come home from Sing Sing and other correctional facilities. We met them through our partnerships with leading criminal justice reform organizations. They are the Center for Justice at Columbia University, a program committed to ending mass incarceration and criminalization and advancing alternative approaches to justice and safety through education, research, and policy change. The Rehabilitation Through the Arts program helps people in prison develop critical life skills through the arts, modeling an approach to the justice system based on human dignity rather than punishment. And the other organization who's a partner with us is Hudson Link for Higher Education in Prison, a program that provides college education, life skills, and reentry support to incarcerated people so they can make a positive impact on their own lives, their families, and communities. We want to thank Arts Westchester for providing financial support for this program. Thanks also to the Board of Trustees and staff of the Sing Sing Prison Museum who provide extraordinary support. And also thanks to our participants today, our poetry makers and readers for their creativity and talent. And now I'd like to introduce Robert Rose III, a participant in the Hudson Link program, a fellow at the Center for Justice, and now a museum associate at the Sing Sing Prison Museum.
Today, the Sing Sing Prison Museum is taking time out to honor National Poetry Month. Poetry is all about exploring the ways that the written word is able to communicate to the world in beautiful forms. Now, it is our aim to celebrate the art of poetry during National Poetry Month, which reminds the public that poets have an integral role to play in our culture and that poetry matters.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Jose Perez, and today I'm gonna read for you a poem called Purple Freedom. Maybe freedom is purple. Ruined skin absorbing the blows from the Shakespearean tale becoming. Maybe love is intimidated by the unknown, the looming potential that might touch would electrify but never does. Maybe love is purple, purple in pursuit of freedom, delighted to travel up yellow brick roads where hopefully I'll meet you, to see if your fears are just as real as mine, and maybe we'll kiss underneath an epiphany and come to terms with us. Maybe freedom is shining, stardust slowly rising from my skin, my body glowing from ideas and desire, to move to and from places that exist in dreams. Pain plants its roots and freedom suddenly looks like the unknown, looks like a cloud of gray smoke forming into a being that resembles me. And I am here inside a place where I could reach out and touch what encases me. And have you ever touched what cripples you? Have you been kind to the person who went out of their way to burn your skin? Maybe freedom is fire, reaching your soul, flames kissing the backs of your eyelids, taken aback as they instigate a stream down your face and a smile. Maybe freedom is your ruined skin. Maybe freedom is a flame kissing the backs of your eyelids, taken aback as they instigate a stream down your face and a smile. Maybe freedom is one morning, its sun rays kissing me hello, its power holding me close, its song whispering sweet nothings into my ear. I wrote this poem with the idea of a bruise. For me, symbolized that someone or something struck me, whether it was, my actual physical body, or whether it was my spirituality or my mentality or my, my sexuality. Uh, uh, and oftentimes, a bruise usually is an indication that some type of trauma happened, right?
Just tell us some of the things that you do with your poetry and other things that you do outside of poetry. Just some things about yourself.
First of all, you have a familiar face, and that's wonderful to see familiar faces. Well, for me, so my experience with poetry came at a time where I was like this young kid aspiring to be this rapper, right? Aspiring to be this, MC. And I landed myself in prison at 16 years old. And when I found myself, you know, um, in the dark, right, and faced with myself, I find myself kind of like switching over, to poetic verse as opposed to a rap song, which is another form of poetry. But I kind of like switch lanes because I wanted to express more of the pain that I was feeling. And doing that, I was able to forge a lot of relationships based on the poems that I was writing because I was able to share them with other people, and for me, that was like the start of my educational journey because poetry became this sense for me of security for me, like emotionally and what was going on in my life at the time personally. But then it also encouraged me to start reading up on other poets who were kind of like experiencing the same things that I experienced. Poets like, Jimmy Santiago Baca, poets like Rumi and Khalil Gibran and Allen Ginsberg, reading up on those poems and being able to like engage with that text put me on this academic journey where I was able to like really have this sense of what I've been wanting kind of like all my life, and that's freedom. So kind of this poem, Purple Freedom is kind of like an homage or like an ode to my pain, sort of like this transformation. Like it used to be my past used to be my pain, but now it's my source of wisdom.
Great. Would you like to share some stuff about the Harvest Moon Poetry Collective that you work with?
Absolutely. So I was introduced to the Harvest Moon Collective Poetry from a brother that we affectionately called Fat Dave. And Dave, he had him and a beautiful being by the name of Janine Palmy Vega, who's a legend. She wrote this beautiful book called The Green Piano. She used to run with people like Allen Ginsberg. She was a part of like the whole like beat generation. So she used to come into Eastern Correctional Facility and conduct these poetry workshops called the Harvest Moon Collective. And I became a part of it. I was a participant. And when Dave left, I was, I was given the opportunity and the privilege to be the head facilitator of the poetry workshop. And in those spaces, we were able to create a lot of material that we kind of like transformed in the facility into like contests, poetry contests. We started like we would write kind of like poems to talk about what was going on in our lives, what was going on in the prisons, what was going on everywhere, right? So that was kind of like a group that kind of like put us in a position where we can, affect change inside the prison, while also kind of like, improving ourselves as a poet because we have this professional poet with us, really being rigorous with us, slicing and dicing our poems and with no censorship either. Like she didn't care. She didn't care about our feelings, but she was real and she helped me improve myself and she wanted me to become better and that for me, like poetry was just the conduit, right? But the relationships for me have been the most meaningful to me. Like poetry, I used to love poetry. I used to like put poetry like up, like on a pedestal. But you know what? I started to realize that, you know, poetry, man, for us is an expression, but like the relationships that I've forged because of the arts, like that to me is more meaningful than anything, because those are the relationships that's gonna last too.
Mm. Thank you for sharing.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank Jose. That was like awesome. I myself am a writer, not a poet, but let me tell you what writing, especially for someone who is formerly incarcerated, did for me. Definitely was a form of freedom. It was definitely something that belongs to you and only you, and no one can take that from you. So I can relate to your writing, I can relate to your stories. And for me, freedom, 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 let it ring. And also what you said in regards to the relationship that it forms. I mean, I know Nascimento and Ivan just from our creative side, Robert as well. And I think that even from before my incarceration, freedom, it was something that, not freedom, writing gave me a sense of freedom that I never knew until I got incarcerated. And going right now to this poem that I'm going to be reading, it is from Nikki Farris. It's Pieces of Me. For me, it was hard to express myself as a poet while I was inside, but it was a way of communicating to my family. We would get all the poets from prison and have them write these letters and our cards to our loved one. And that was awesome. Like, it was nothing for, it was more than everything for us to have a poet do a card for us to send to our families versus us buying any card in commissary. So with that, I am going to read I Ache for You. I want to feel my fingertips trace the curve of your face. Brush my lips across your widow's peak. Feel the warmth of your cheek against my cheek. Because I ache for you. I still recall the weight of your head on my shoulder. Reimagine it now with you older. Your palms pressed against mine, gentle fingers intertwine. There's a pit in my stomach, a hole in my heart. It's a pain that's so deep, it tears me apart. And I still ache for you. So with this poem, it definitely reminds me of the ache that I felt as a mother. I know for others, you had other type of aches, but when you are away from your family, from your children, from your loved ones, there's nothing like a poem just to let them know how much the pain is.
Thank you. You want to tell us some stuff about the production company you started, Mimi, La-Madrina?
So I know I'm Mimi, but on my creative side, I am La-Madrina Mimi. And that is actually how I came to work with Brent and the Sing Sing Prison Project and yourself, Robert. I am an artist, I'm a storyteller, I am a writer, and that is what I do with the company. I am an artistic, creative person, and right now I am doing a podcast. I am also collecting oral histories for the Sing Sing Prison Museum, which is a task that continue way beyond right now. We've been like for 2 years doing these stories. And you know what, Robert, it never gets old. I can hear a person's experience and every time it is different. It is so different. It changes me. And I am honored to work with you, Brent, to have these stories preserved.
Thank you for sharing. We'd like to turn to Ivan now and hear some words from Ivan.
So I'm going to read a poem by a good friend of mine. His name is Cedric Blackwell, and he's still incarcerated. He's on his 18th year of a 20 to life sentence. He's currently incarcerated at Woodburn Correctional Facility. And so just to contextualize it a little bit, early 2020, when COVID, the lockdowns and all that first hit, so around June, maybe August, I get a call from Cedric. He calls me on the phone and we're talking, and he says to me, "Yo, bro, I'm afraid, man. I'm really afraid." And it sort of took me aback. I've never heard him speak like this before. I'm like, "What are you talking about? What's up?" He said, "This COVID thing, man. I've come this far in my journey. I've made all these transformations. I'm in college. I'm a completely different person. I've got so much to give the world. And there's a possibility that I can get knocked off by this bug and die in this cage. That's not the way I imagine the story to end, the end of the story." And I was like, holy shit. So he was really depressed. And so I advised him. I said, "Why don't you write?" Because he's a musician. I said, "Why don't you write a piece of music, send it out to me. We'll tighten it up, we'll tweak it, and then we'll play it at whatever venues that we play at." And he said, "I'm not really in a music mood." I said, "So write a poem or something." He said, "I've never written a poem." Anyway, so he writes a bunch of poems. He just keeps sending me poems. These things are pouring out of him, and they're amazing. They're amazing. So I want to read this one particular one that, pardon me, because I get extremely emotional every time I read it. This particular poem, and it's called "Say." And I'm going to read it. It's called "Say" by Cedric Blackwell. When it's all over, when it's all said and done, and I have been returned to the earth, what will be said about me? Will they tell people that I was an urban advocate, a cultural reformist, and the teenager who used a boombox and a cardboard dance floor to change the definition of what is art? Will they say that? Will they say to my amazing daughter that it was in a moment of youthful curiosity that I first drank from the deceptive waters of self-indulgence, never knowing that my thirst would grow and I would end up living in the same cardboard box I once used to impact the world? Will they say that? Will it be said that I was blessed twice with the love of a woman, but twice my love for self made a mockery of the gift? They must say that. Will they say, after years of knocking myself down, I finally came to terms with the fact that any chances that I may have had to make a change would require the assistance of a power much greater than myself, and that I would have to roll up my sleeves and play my part by working on myself, carving out my David, the masterpiece that was always there? Yeah, they need to say that. Please tell my two precious grandsons that their grandpa never possessed enough words to truly express his love for them, and that just the mention of them would bring him to tears. Yeah, say that. Someone please tell those amazing boys that none of the labels that were hung around their grandpa's neck, drug addict, criminal, or convict, were accurate, valid, or true definitions of who he really was. No, they were just mild markers that he drove past on his life's road, that their grandfather was a real man, an imperfect human who made many, many mistakes, that they themselves will make, because to be human is to be flawed. That grandpa always wanted to be his best, but he didn't always know how or when. When it's all over, when it's all said and done, and I have been returned to the earth, please say to all who care to hear that I lived every day of my life from sunup to sundown, wanting to be nothing short of monumental and anything but mediocre. Please say to all who care to hear that sappy romance movies would make me cry, that I didn't kiss a girl until I was 19, that I loved and adored my father and regretted never having the courage to tell him as much, that I was blessed to have been able to touch people and have other people touch me with the music and love, that I had 5 minutes of fame once a day for every day of my life because God makes stars, not Hollywood. That when it's all over, when it's all said and done, and I have been returned to the earth, that whether y'all knew it or not, I loved you all. And I pray that you love me back.
Thank you for sharing that poem from Cedric. I know Cedric, he's a nice guy, wonderful drummer. You know, always learned a lot from him. For you, I know Mimi mentioned earlier about the poems that people would put in cards. I remember a time when you were an artist making cards and stuff all the time, Ivan, and that was something that came back to me when she mentioned that, how much people wanted that special card to send to their family. And I remember when you learned how to make these real special cards and took a lot of time. And I just want to say thank you for those cards. I still remember it, and just the time and effort you put into it is, you know, it's just reflecting back on things that are really touching. And I know you work with, as a researcher with Columbia University, and you're also a musician. Could you tell us about some of the work you do with Columbia and the Justice Center and in the Social Relations Lab?
Sure. So I wear two hats. I'm fortunate enough to work at Columbia University. I've been there since my release in 2018. I work with a bunch of just incredibly amazing folks, man. The family there is fantastic. So we have a staff of about 30 folks. About 18 of us are formerly incarcerated. We're all in leadership positions. We're all doing amazing things. So one of my hats, I work as a researcher. So we research everything from police brutality to food deserts to you name it. Anything that impacts society, impacts human beings, we research. And I also work as a reentry specialist for the JIE program, the Justice and Education Scholars Program, which is a program at Columbia that allows formerly incarcerated people to take credited courses at Columbia for free. So my job is to sort of connect folks who come through the program with whatever resources they might need to make the transition home as smooth as possible, whether it be housing, job opportunities, walking them through the welfare process. That's what I do. As a musician, I work with, I'm on the advisory committee of the Carnegie Hall Musical Connections program. We were doing gigs regularly, pre-COVID, post-COVID. I mean, during the pandemic, obviously everything stopped, but everything is beginning to open up again. But these things, so the music, the art, like Robert said earlier, the cards started when I was inside. I had never drawn anything. I've never created anything in my life prior to my incarceration. I learned these things about myself when I was inside. You know, the programs, RTA, they did an art program that I became part of, and it was just incredible, just meeting this new version of myself, and just every day, every week, every month, every year, being able to see and to be introduced to a better version of myself. It was an incredible journey. And I think that's what art does. Art sort of reintroduces, or maybe introduces for the first time, a person to a better version of themselves. And we're able to sort of pour ourselves into our art and sort of share it with the world, which is incredible.
Now we'd like to turn to Nascimento.
So I would say I got into poetry. I started writing actually when I was younger, when I was a teenager going to high school in Jamaica, but I never took it serious. And when I got locked up, I just started to write to help deal with my day-to-day depression, other than exercising. So one time there was this guy who I wrote something and he read it and he said, "You wrote this?" And I said, "Yes." So he said to me, "Can I send it to my girl?" So I was like, "Okay, I don't care." And he gave it to his girl. She wrote him back. He got commissary food. He got commissary money. He brought me some food. So I was like, what is this for? He said, the poem you wrote, she loved it. So, he was one of them guys who were like, I was in the college at the time. He came inside the cell with me, so we used to talk. So he saw like a stack of poems and stuff. He's like, yo, you in here writing these? I'm like, yeah. So I started writing poems for him to send to his girlfriend. Never took it serious. Didn't mean much to me anyway. To me, it was just how I dealt with the situation that I was in. When I got to, I went around the world, went to Greenhaven, went to Coxsackie. When I got to Sing Sing, and I got into the Hudson Link Mercy College program. My English professor, Professor Joanne Skousen, because those poems I'd sent home, I sent those home. She was my English 112 professor, which was the poetry class. So I wrote, she asked us to write some poems and I wrote, and then she saw it and she's like, yo, you're a poet, you can write poetry. I was like, please. I was one of them professors who always tell you good things like, you can do it, but you're in a place where the environment says you're nothing. So I think I was drawn more to the idea of that what the environment was saying about me instead of what the professor was saying about me. In any event, I wrote some things and she saw it and she's like, can I borrow this? And after a while I just started writing and I realized that it helped me more and more. It became therapeutic. To me, it was like purging because of the situation that I was in. So the poems that I'm going to share today are poems that I find to be significant messages to me. The first one is a poem that I wrote about my son. One of the most life-changing experience for me was when I became a father. And it's simply like what Mimi said, like you feel like a part of your attachment. I lost a child when I was 21 years old. She would have been 20 this year, a girl. And from that, I tell myself, I don't ever want another child. I never wanted kids. I was done with kids. I never wanted to be a father. I just didn't want it. Anyway, when I got married and I eventually had a son, um, things changed. My perspective on life changed. It felt different, but I also felt inadequate because my father, I was raised by my father. My father's been there all my life. So me not being in the same space with my son, I didn't know how to cope with it. I didn't know how to deal with that. And I know when my son was born, I knew I wouldn't be home for another 5 years. So I know the first 5 years of his life, he would be coming to security checkpoints to see me, and he would be treated in ways that he probably cannot understand. Like, why are they doing this? What's going on here? So I wrote a poem to him, and I shared it with my professors, and she was like, wow, this is very deep. And I had a bunch of poems that I was writing, and then one day, because people were getting packed up and just shipping out and moving, sometimes when you get packed up, the correction officers, they destroy your stuff intentionally. So what I did, like I compiled all the poems that I was writing at the time, and the poems that I wrote at Sing Sing into a book, and just kept it. I sent one of the books home actually to my father, and I kept the other one just to keep it. So without further ado, I was 32 years old when I became a father, 10 years older than when my father became my father. So I don't know what the significance of that is. So the poem is titled Father at 33, for whatever the word father meant to me at the time. Not seeing him when he wakes up, not hearing him cry. Memories from yesteryear, cute little smiles, cuddles like teddy bears. Fingers so tiny, yet they make a fist. Cheeks so chubby, you long to kiss. The feeling that seems to linger, so restless, trying to understand, crying to express want. Redemption is in your eyes. Your heart is made for miles. You have your mother's lips. A smile helps me through the day. The demons try to take my joy, as if these walls aren't ugly enough. Have your milk and applesauce while breakfast tray spills the leftover into gray bins. No such thing as a quiet night. 5:30 comes the list, with a dawn snuggled just bright. And if they hassle your mother, it's just because I am your father. To see you with smiles painted green and proud. They are the only way I can reach you safely. One slip and things get crazy. To hold you in these blankets, smelling so fresh while not wearing pink, I'm walking through these tunnels. This type of situation must not be a trend. Now that I can see, with me it ends. It's okay to cry when you leave me. How else would I feel the need to be? I looked into your future and saw you calling. A few moons and we will be playing. Love is now capable because of you to help with all this blue. Just think about riding your bike and reading and you'll hear my voice. We'll see for tomorrow's visit. Know that I'm a father at 33.
Thank you again for sharing. We'd like to turn to Jose now for another selection from Jose.
Hello, everyone. I absolutely love everything I've been listening to. I just wanted to say that. Really appreciate it. It kind of gives me this yearning. It reminds me of this yearning to be around people doing this. So I got another idea. Good thing that, when you get around great minds, your mind starts working like, oh man, I want to do something, Um, but anyway, this poem that I want to read to you guys is called I Wish I Was Me. And it's just a reflection on just looking at things and kind of like thinking about judgment, like thinking about what others think about you sometimes is not conducive to your growth. It's just not, sometimes it can hinder you, right? When you're worried about other people and their judgments and stuff like that. So I wrote this poem with that mindset. I wish I was a real hitting on a mosaic tiled high wall, 10 inches before the ceiling in the back of every room. Random visions for random reasons. I take the chance to breathe, to place your pink manicured fingers on my face. I like to place your pink manicured fingers on my face. I like to be looked into, see if you can really see me. I see you in your evening dress you wear in the morning, and you can see me blowing kisses or singing some warrior song, dreaming you up to be whoever I'm in the mood for you to be. And usually it's always this one person. I wish you were dancing with me more, with your toes laughing this shuffling giggle, and your legs are synchronized with your eyes, or with the tune of your spirit as trees sway to a windy day, its tip glows from the sun rays. I wish I could kiss you as much as the ocean does the shore. And I wish you were here, not where I reside, but where I dream. So you see all that's coming to us when I leave. When I soar above this gun tower and razor wire fences and dark corners become light, open fields. Open fields become places to dive into with no worries of a mirror looking back at me because you won't judge me.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Wow.
Amazing.
Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
One of the things that we learned is that being part of certain institution, the Hudson family, that we do other things with our time. Sometimes my family member used to call me and I used to tell them that I was busy doing something. They're like, "You're in jail. How can you be busy?" But they never understood that we had a ton of things different doing. I along with two of my colleagues started a news magazine that we learned from Robert Rose. I think Rose one was called The Chronicle, ours were called The Abeng. So where we showcase the best of the Caribbean community talent, as well as the African American community talent, because I believe we're all distant cousins. We're just dropped off at different ports. So one of the things that we identified with in prison was injustice. And I'm sure that you guys know about John Adrian Velasquez. Like a lot of people were on his campaign. A lot of people were, when we say on the campaign, even though we might not see us on TV, but we were behind the scenes was saying, don't stop fighting for your freedom. Because I think what injustice, it was said injustice, don't worry about it. Let me not misquote Dr. King. In any event, um, when we saw what happened to Eric Garner on national TV, it was a shock. So I wrote a poem called Stop Questioning Frisk because that's what got Eric Garner killed. Stop questioning Frisk. There's a quote that I put inside of my lead up to the poem. And the quote is saying that the fish is the one that understands the water the least. And I say that to say what I find to be amazing that some of the conversations that I had with a lot of people, a lot of the men behind bars, is that we had all the solutions to fix the crime in our neighborhood. And one of the reasons why we had all the solutions because some of us contributed to it. And they said, you know, the ones closest to the problems are usually the ones closest to the solution. And I realized that when you are the fish inside of the bowl, when there's nothing but that around you, you really don't have an understanding of what is going on. When you're taken outside of the fish bowl, then you see the water for what it is. Time to stop. Stop for a second. Stop. Smell the air. Stop. Smell the coffee. Stop. Taste the food. Stop. Taste the water. Stop. Look at life. Stop. Look at each other. Stop. Feel better? Stop. Feel bad about bad. Stop. Hear the words. Stop. Hear each other out. Question. Question the air. Why is it polluted? Question. The coffee. Where did it come from? Question. The food. Is it genetically modified? Question. Our worth. Whose life is really precious? Question. Our feelings. Why must we care for each other? Question. What we hear. Who are saying these things? Question. Everything. FRISK. FRISK. These bodies, delicate or rough. FRISK. The air. It exists, yet we can't touch it. FRISK. Our food. Is it truly nutritious? FRISK. The lighter. What does he matter? What does his life matter? FRISK. Our feelings. Are we living or are existing? FRISK. The rhetoric. What are we listening for? It's time to stop, question, and frisk our senses. That was my contribution to Eric Gardner.
Jose and Nascimento, because Nascimento talked about like having just like a book of your poems, and Jose, you talked about just writing, and even to you, Ivan, to your friend, is anyone publishing any of your work? Where can we find any of these poems? I know for myself as well, I'm gonna drop my girl's book, right? And her name is Nikki Ferris, and she wrote all her poems from the inside, but where can we find your work?
So for me, I am currently working on several projects that are actually going to come out all at once. I'm working on a script, I'm working on a memoir, and I'm working on a collection of poetry, all at once. It's a collection of stuff that I accumulated while in prison, and also things that I've been writing in here. And also, you can find my poetry on Instagram. I have an Instagram page called Poetry Life. Yeah, so that's it. Like I'm working on some things while also trying to, you know, launch a career, you know, having been home only a year, right? So it's I'm you know, I'm doing some things, but there's a collection coming out for me very soon. Well, I just wanted to tell you guys that, you know, I'll be remiss if I don't mention that both my poems that I recited today were both written in Sing Sing Correctional Facility. I was in Sing Sing, getting my master's degree from the New York Theological Seminary, at the MPS program, and you know, I wrote these poems in Sing Sing, and it should be noted that, you know, that's the environment in which these poems were born.
I would like to thank you all for taking part in our event today. This was a wonderful event and I really enjoyed it. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in and watching us today. And at this point, I would like to turn it over to Brent for any closing words.
Thanks again to all of you for participating in this wonderful program of poetry reading. I hope our audience is as moved and as inspired by the work that we've heard today as I am. And again, I want to thank our partners, the Center for Justice, the Rehabilitation Through the Arts, Hudson Link for Higher Education in Prison, and thank Arts Westchester for their support. Please go to our website, www.singsingprisonmuseum.org, for more information about how you can participate in our program. Thank you.